Here we go with an intro video for Tract 20 at the Tracts at White River. This is going to be a 10-acre property. We've got it outlined, highlighted with, I guess, like a light blue. Would you call it a blue or a light green? I'm not sure. It's the only highlighted tract here. That's Tract 20 right there. This map shows 36 tracts out here, each 10 acres. There may be 36 tracts. There also may only be 24 when all is said and done. It may only go up to 24. I guess we're not positive about that yet. But either way, this is Tract 20. That's not going to change. And its location obviously won't change either. So it's over here toward the east side. It's rectangular in shape. Roughly 330 by 1320 are the dimensions. About the most standard dimension you can have for a 10-acre tract. If it's not 660 square, then a 10-acre tract, a well split one, is probably 330 by 1320, and that's what the case is here. The purple lines are the existing road system, so you've actually got a road crossing over about the middle, giving you access to the north and the south side, which is kind of nice. Rather than do the whole drive to the Tracts at White River from Batesville, which is about 15 miles southeast, we're just going to focus more on the tract itself. If you want to see a good video of the actual drive and of the using this map to show the drive or the route, you can see that on the main page for the Tracts at White River. That's likely the page you came from if you clicked on Tract 20 within the list of available tracts. Then you probably already saw the main page. If not, it's easy enough to find on our website. Just go to the website and check out the section for that. So Tract 20 itself, what we will talk about is how to get there once you get to the development. So you'll be coming in on this green road up here. This is Lock 3 Road. It's a county road, but keep in mind the county basically does no maintenance once it gets out to this point, because there's really no people out here. So that certainly could change, if people start to do a few hunting cabins or just spend some time out here, and you contact the county highway department and let them know that, then certainly at some point they would likely start picking up maintenance on Lock 3 Road. But even if they do that, you'll still want a four-wheel drive truck or SUV, because it is a gravel road, and it is pretty rough in spots for sure. We've never had a problem in a four-wheel drive truck getting out here, but we've always taken a four-wheel drive truck, so that's probably why. So beware of that. If you're pulling a big trailer, the best thing to do would be get out here in a truck first and eyeball the exact road conditions yourself and decide if you want to pull that trailer out here or not. But I know sometimes that can be a hardship, but maybe there's maybe you could park the trailer at your hotel in Batesville while you run out with your truck and check the road. There's a couple other options for that, but we sure don't want anybody to get out here with an inexpensive trailer and, do some damage to your rims or something like that. So, but you'll be coming in on Lock 3 Road, excuse me, into the northern part of the development. You'll cross over Track 654321, and then once you're just a little bit west, you'd have the option of veering to the right to go into that access point to the White River, which is that concrete slab that goes into the water. Or if you veer left or stay left or stay straight, basically, and it'll veer left for you, you'll go up this short hill, and then once you get to the top, look to the left, look to the east side, and you'll see the gate at the start of the easement road system. Excuse me. It's basically a pipe gate, I guess. It doesn't look like a farm gate. It's kind of more industrial than that, but it's a big pipe gate. It may be locked. Just get a hold of us before you make the trip out there, and we'll give you the instructions to open that gate up. It's not too big a deal. And then you'll head in. Whoop, let me zoom in a little bit here. You'll cross this power line, and what that is actually the power line, because we've got the hydroelectric dam up here. That's Lock 3 Road gets its name because this is Lock 3. So you've got the dam itself, and then over here on the edge is the actual lock. So being a lock that they use to fill with water to allow boats to go up and downstream. Large boats can go up and downstream with that lock. So that's what's going on there. But it's a hydroelectric dam, and in order to get the power to Batesville, they've got this line run. So even though I don't know that it's actively generating power now because I don't know that they need it to be. You'll still see that line. It's a pretty obvious landmark. So you'll cross under that line, enter the development, and you'll start to go up a hill. It's a fairly long hill, but it's really, not a steep hill in our minds. You cross over a couple tracts. You'll come to a Y in the road, and you're just going to take the path most traveled, and that's where it's going to veer to the right. You'll keep going, keep going. Now, the one place you'll want to pay a little attention is when you get over here toward the east side of 17, and the road, you'll come to a Y in the road, and at that point, I'm not sure which one is going to look like the more traveled path, but you do want to stay to the left when you get to that point, and then that's going to take you very shortly, take you right to your property, right to Tract 20. So if you have the MapRight app, or the Land ID app, it's now called, on your phone, and you have that set up properly, you want to do that in town. You want to do that in Batesville or some town where you have really good cell reception. You want to get that all set up and running and just leave it on your phone, because once it's active and running and working, it really doesn't need much of a cell signal at all. So even if you happen to, have a day when there's just not much of a cell coverage for you, or maybe you have a carrier that doesn't work too well out there, as long as you already have it running on your phone, we've never heard of anyone having an issue. What we have heard of being an issue is if you get out there, get a little turned around and say, I want to try that MapRight, there's little chance that it's going to set up and work properly unless you're in an area that has very good cell coverage. So just do it in town before you go out there, and then whether you need it or not, you'll have it on your phone and it'll already be running. So Tract 20, I think we can turn the shading off. Let's see if we can actually. So this interactive map, you'll see basically an identical map on the listing page for the property, which is likely where you are right now, actually. Okay, how do we turn that off? Let's go to that one. There we go. Save changes. That's fine. The only difference might be that the map within the listing page may not specifically show Tract 20, the Tracts at White River, ID number WZ20, because I think we use the same map that gets inserted into all the listing pages, but the rest will look the same, so you'll have no problem navigating right to Tract 20 and doing your thing with that. You can change the base map, which is nice. This is just kind of a satellite image. We can see the property is 98% wooded. We've got what look like a couple, fairly natural clearings, and that's interesting. But basically a just entirely wooded property. And why don't we switch over to a topo map here and get a look at how the land sits. This is what's called the vintage topo map. So these were created in the 1950s, but we use them all the time. It was the only topo map that was available until about 2 years ago. And then they came out with what they've called the modern topo map. So we'll show you that really quickly. The modern topo map's fine. It's kind of a sanitized version of the vintage topo. We tend to use the vintage topo because it just has a little more information than the modern topo does. So it kind of shows sometimes things that the modern topo simply doesn't show for whatever reason. If you look at the black dashed line here, all that is indicating is that when this map was made in the 1950s roughly, that was a road at that time. All these roads were in existence back then, but they tended not to show every little road and trail on the topo maps. They would, on something like this, they would pick what looked like the main road to them, and that's what they would show, and that's what they've done here. So that road's been there quite some time, as have all the roads. But as far as topography, if you're familiar with topo maps, this makes some sense. If not, this looks just crazy. But what it's showing us is that we'll start with the south side. From the road itself, as you go south, so I guess just really quickly, on topo maps, you've got these lines which are called contour lines, and they're showing you the elevation change. So on this particular topo map, like most of the ones we work with, the elevation change between two contour lines is 20 feet. So any two lines that are adjacent to one another, there's going to be a 20-foot elevation change when you go from one line to the other. That's total elevation change. So that being said, when the lines are spaced far apart, it's indicating flatter terrain. And when they're spaced much closer, like down here, that's indicating steeper terrain because that's more of an elevation change in a smaller space. So that's indicating steeper terrain. The dark lines don't have any special significance other than they're generally at the 100-foot intervals, and they go by above sea level. So this darkened line that you see here, which is actually the same darkened line that you see up here as far as the contour, that's the 500-foot above sea level contour line. So on this map, every fifth line is a darkened line. And that way, if you're zoomed out, it's really easy to see large elevation changes without having to count every little line, because you can just count the dark lines and go, 100, 200, 300, etc. So that's what's going on with that. So now that being said, as we start at the road and go south, initially it's basically level, which is pretty common. When they would build roads, they would build it toward the middle of the ridge. And this is a large flat ridge up here, so it's basically level. And then once it starts to slope down, it starts sloping somewhat gradually. And then once you get in a little bit, it's actually still sloping pretty steeply. This is showing. So if we look at just for instance, these last three lines, the thick one and the two below that, that's indicating a 20, 40, a 40-foot drop right in that little, quote unquote, little area. Obviously, it's not that little once you get out there, but so that probably not a bluff, probably not a sheer drop, or the lines would basically be muddled together and almost look like one thick line or very little spacing. But it is showing us that it's steep. And these topo maps are not designed to be 100% precise, but they generally give us a pretty good idea of what's going on. So at a minimum, we could say, hey, as you go south from the road, it starts off level. After not too far, it starts to slope down. And then once you get about halfway down the hill, it starts getting pretty steep. And then you've got the creek bed at the bottom. Going south from there, it rises back up. At first, somewhat steeply, and then once you get to the south side, it's very nearly leveling out on the south side. Just looking at these lines. In fact, if you were to be out there, there's a good chance that if you're standing on the south side, it either appears level or is level in spots. So you've got the south side of the road as a potential for a building site or campsite. You do have a setback distance from any shared roadways out here, so you want to be aware of that. There would probably still be an opportunity, like in an area like this, to maybe do a small site or a place to park and be beyond the setback. Or, you almost have to get out there and really explore it in person. Contour lines here are showing that even though it slopes down, it might not be it might not be too steep to do a building site or do a parking area or whatnot. So that's on the south side. If we look on the north side, we actually have a little different story. It's similar in that it starts off level as we go north from the easement road, but right away the first difference is it stays level for quite a bit further. So when we're here on the north side, and actually this map and the map within the listing page will have it too, it has a measurement function. So on this map, we go to Tools and click that, and we click on the ruler. On the map within the listing page, I believe to use the measurement function, you just have to open it within its own window, and there should be a button within the map, within that interactive map that says, click here to open in a separate window. Although maybe you can measure it while it's in the same window, but either way, there will be a ruler somewhere, a tool function. So we're going to click on that. We'll start at the road and bring it in to, and we'll go to this first contour. That's, not going to be exactly where it starts to slope down by any means, but it's good enough for our purposes. And we'll double click that. Whoops, I guess I didn't double click properly. Oh, maybe I did. And that's showing about 125 feet. So I cannot recall off the top of my head if it's a 100-foot setback or a 50-foot setback, but either way, at 125, you're beyond the setback from the road. So if you wanted to do a parking area or potentially even a site there, you might have that as an option. But more interestingly, let's look over here toward, well, before we do that, let's continue going north from this area, and it continues to slope down, but it's not until you get, over here toward the west side that you start getting lines kind of closing in on one another, where you're going to have a steeper area. So all this, it does slope down, but just looking at this map, it's probably not a slope that would be too steep to be usable. I mean, people have different ideas about what is and isn't usable for, a building site or a campsite or a place to park their RV or whatnot. But just in our opinion and based on the topo map, a lot of this area could be usable for just about all those things. But if we were tasked with going out here to build a driveway and a site just based on this topo map, and obviously things can change when you get out and you might have different ideas, or you might see a feature that you like and you want to change things. But if it was just based on this topo map, then we would go over here a little more toward the east side of the property, and we would likely take in a driveway not really going straight northwest, not perpendicular to the road, but more at an angle to the road. So we're actually crossing over the grain, if you will, of that hillside, which is going to make our whole driveway much less steeper. And this entire area, if you look at the spacing on these contour lines, that's some pretty nice spacing as far as usable property, usable land, especially here in the Ozarks, where it's rare to have perfectly flat anything. That's where we would look if we were just based on this topo map, and that's what we're going to base it on, because that's what we have to go on, other than the drone video and the ground video, which only shows a little bit from the road here. So looking at the spacing on these, I'm kind of looking at this area in particular as probably an area that, if it doesn't have some nice flat area, it's probably pretty close. It's probably got some area that's pretty close to flat. And even going on down this way as well. I mean, you're very likely to have areas in here that are more than flat enough to be usable for, a standard site for a cabin or campsite or whatnot. But you probably want to get out there and explore it before you make any big plans. But judging by the topo map, that looks pretty good to us. So it is cool to have this little creek bed crossing over the property. That means you could potentially have, a live spring somewhere in this hillside. You could potentially have a cave somewhere in this hillside. Those are things we have not looked into, and we certainly are not going to say that they're on the property. But if we were going to go out here and search for a cave or a spring, then a little mini valley like this on the south side is exactly where we would start looking. Because that's the kind of ground where we have found those things in the past. So just something to keep in mind there. But we won't make this video super long, but before we sign off, we'll go back to the aerial. I kind of wanted to explore that little open area. That's kind of neat. I bet we'll see that on the drone video, although we might not know to look for it on the drone video. I guess we could erase that if we want to. Maybe not. Let's just turn the eyeball off so it disappears. There we go. Okay, so we're using a basic satellite aerial. This one is called hex aerial. Not sure why, not sure what that means, but in this case it's the most clear summertime aerial. Here's a different one that appears to be a late summer. It's not very clear. Here's another one that's kind of same idea. This is like a late fall and it's just not very clear. Generally the most clear is the Google Maps, and this does have a Google base map. We'll switch to it in a moment. More often than not, the Google Maps are going to show a summertime view, but in this case it actually shows a wintertime view, which works out well because we already have this hex aerial that gives us a pretty clear summertime view. So I'm I'm happy that Google happens to show the wintertime view, and you'll see why in a second here. If it'll switch, there we go. Okay, so that's middle of the winter. First off, we can tell that the property is almost all hardwood trees, because there's just little to no greenery, which would be, if there were greenery, it would be pine trees or cedar trees more than likely, and we just see very, very little of that. So that means that this is probably just about all hardwood, as far as red oak, white oak, hickory trees. We've found, I believe, pecan trees out here. We found black walnut trees on these properties. Sycamore trees, which we thought for years were softwood, and then someone corrected us and said they're hardwood. We've seen a lot of sycamores out here by the little creek beds and whatnot. And the other thing that's great about this wintertime Google map is we can clearly see there has not been recent logging on this property. So every property's been logged that we know of in Missouri and just about anywhere else. But if there had been any commercial logging within the last, 10 or 15 or even 20 years on this property, it's extremely likely that we would see signs of that with a wintertime aerial picture. So like this area here, this hillside, we would see tops that were down, we would see limbs that were down, we would see irregular shadows from a large number of trees that were left maybe leaning or bent. We would actually see stumps in the wintertime. You can see them in the aerial, and they're little miniature shadows. We would see one or more of those things, and we see none of those things. So the few trees that are down are down naturally. Any logging that you see on the property was done quite some time ago. I mean, we generally say there may have been trees taken for firewood, for personal firewood usage over the last few years, but I don't even think we've seen signs of that on this property. It just looks like a really nice tract. You're going to have a good mixture of mature timber, middle-aged timber, and some young timber as well. And again, the fact that we cannot see signs of logging in this wintertime Google aerial means that it's been quite some time since this had any commercial logging done. So that is really, really nice to see. Let's go back to, moving all around here. Let's go back to a summertime aerial. There we go. So beautiful property. That's Tract 20. If you have any questions on this one, just let us know. You can reach us in the office Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, or you can email us anytime. And we try to be responsive to emails even after hours when possible. It's not always possible, but sometimes it is. So get a hold of us. We'll be happy to chat about this property. You can check the availability on the website, or you're welcome to call us, and we can tell you whether it's available or not. If it is, we'll chat with you about it. If it's not, we'll let you know what we have that might be similar, or you can let us know what you're looking for, and we can let you know if we have anything coming up. So, but yeah, that's Tract 20 at the Tracts at White River. Gorgeous property. If you have any questions, just let us know.